kid, a baby still, basically. You know, probably couldn't even read or write at that age. Do you know what I mean?
What did the judge say to you, Al?
He just turned around and said, "Would you like to go to the seaside, sonny boy?" And he's looking down at his balls.
So you thought you were going to the seaside?
Yeah, I thought I was going to the seaside.
Did you go to the seaside?
No.
Where did you go?
They put me in a children's home. Bearing in mind, I'd been in 4 or 5 respite children's homes prior to this. I went to a children's home, one of the biggest children's homes in the country, called Beach Home in Banstead, Surrey. Now, it was like a little village. It was under a village kind of headlining or banner. Had 24 cottages in it, each named after trees and things like that, naming these places because it was called Beach Home, lined by beech trees. You had ash, laburnum, larch, thistle, maple, laurel, lime, oak, chestnut, Christ, and he nearly named them all.
Crazy how they seem to follow like the tree line.
Yeah, I did that in Shirley Oaks as well. I think it was the willows and things like that in Shirley Oaks, and I think many other places are rather the same. They use this kind of like establishment mould on children's homes.
And this is what I was saying about the school yesterday. You know, it's next to a forest. You know, they love the forest, they love the woods, they love the trees. They name all the children's homes after it. It's just very strange how they're all after something to do with nature.
Well, they did that with Beecham. Beecham was, acreage-wise, it was huge. I'd say probably about a mile long. If you was to go in that kind of way about it. It started off at Banstead, and you had woods and trees, and you had 2 major football pitches, probably a double football pitch at the top end, and then you had football pitches, you had kind of woods and spinney at the top and bottom, and they grew all the Christmas trees and that in the children's home, because at one time, being a self catering, self looking after itself with its own maintenance guys, its own groundsmen, everything was kind of like built on a kind of like parish, where a parish council would run it all. The home was run by all its own staff.
A paedophile's playground.
It was a paedophile's playground, because at the end of the day, none of the staff were vetted properly. They were brought in from off the streets, and they could have been anybody. I mean,
They weren't anybody. There was 68 paedophiles in Shirley Oaks. I don't know how many were in your home, but your home is in the paper, and you know they've never took your case seriously. Yet you're here still fighting for justice.
Yeah, well said. And like I say, I ended up going to Beach Home. They took me into the offices where you went through the main front gates. You went up to a building in front of you with a clock on top of the as you go in under the door. And I was kind of like went into an office where I was kind of like vetted. You know, and they're all looking at me and sort of scrutinising me, or, you know, psychologising me, or whatever you want to call it. And they had members of staff, whether they be deputy heads, matrons, superintendents, or whatever the case may. And then they told me to go to the stores. I went to the stores. I had to take my home clothes off that I had brought in. They put me in shorts, like a pair of khaki coloured shorts. And everything was labelled. All your clothes had labels in them.
You look like a child from the war.
Yeah, I often look at it, and I sometimes think I look like something out of the bridge over the River Kwai, the really, really war film where British soldiers were prisoners of war, and they had to build this railway bridge.
You look like neglected, malnourished. You were severely neglected, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because what they used to do, some of the things they used to do to the kids in the beach home, they'd put food before you, and if you didn't eat it, as punishment, they'd put it before you again the next day. So they would try to force you to eat that food. If you didn't get it, you'd eat it. And the punishments and the tortures and the whole cycle of violence stemmed from Laburnum, the first cottage I went into. Because as I went into this first cottage, where they took me down to, it was called Laburnum. Had a yellow door, like the yellow flower of a laburnum tree. And I went in there, and there was a woman looking in the front door down at me through her glasses like this. And that was like Granny Grace, we called her. But the kids said, don't say Granny Grace to her, because she'd go mental. And she was slap happy. She'd slap you around the backs of the neck, around the ears, soft tissue, and around the backs of the legs. And when you had these shorts on, it was really, really painful and stung like mad. And then they used to put you in these baths with carbolic soap, and they used to burn you. And it was awful. From day dot, it was kind of like every day you either got hit, whacked, pushed, shoved, shouted at, or bullied in one form, shape, or another.
They burnt your eyes, didn't they?
Yeah, well, let's go back to that. I mean, there's our photographs of me as a young child, of me and my sister, both with really, really dark rings around our eyes, and the hurt in our eyes. You can see it it's there for everybody to see. But yeah, it was abusive from day one. Audrey Wilson was Grace Robinson's sidekick. And she was a paedophile as well. She took me into a dormitory. She came into the boys' dormitory. She was touching me up in the bedrooms in a dormitory. And what's the ironic thing is, kids turn their back when they used to walk into the dormitories and come to get you from the dormitories. The other kids would turn turtles, could turn round, and every single child would be sleeping with their kind of like their back to the wall, or their back towards the staff, and their faces facing the wall, so they weren't looking. Because if they were looking, then the staff would have either
the fear that I get from that, a kid hiding in the bed because they're so scared that if they look at someone, then that's going to happen to them, and clearly you would be like, do it to someone else, not me, because these kids are going through horrific trauma. They're going through sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, and it's absolutely horrific what they have to go through.
And they might, as well as that, get taken as well. So rather than get taken, they played the obedience role and just did nothing and stood stum and didn't move, didn't flinch, pretended they was either asleep or something like that, so they wouldn't get disturbed. Anything to distract attention to themselves, because they didn't want to get taken. Very, very abusive. I mean, Audrey Wilson.
That's so heartbreaking.
I know. Audrey Wilson would take you in a bedroom, a staff bedroom, and she's a very, very big set woman and large Welsh woman.
She stunk, didn't she?
She did. I mean, a lot of survivors' testimonies are paramount, because the one thing that SARS always turn around and say about their perpetrators and the abusers and the paedophiles is the smell of them. They even smell of drink. If they drink alcohol, you can smell it on them. If they smoke cigarettes, you can smell the tobacco on them. If their hygiene is not good, I mean, she didn't wash herself very well. She actually stunk of very, very bad BO and bodily smells where she probably didn't wash herself properly. That goes for anybody who doesn't look after their hygiene, but a lot of survivors will turn around and say that paramountly that staff had very bad hygiene. A lot of these abusers, the thing that sticks with survivors for years after is the horrific hygiene of the abusers. The smell stayed with you, and you could almost taste it for a long time afterwards.
I've heard that from a lot of survivors.